Welcome everybody, this is ISIS, the International Solar Energy Society, presenting to you today the IEA SHC Solar Academy webinar on Global Solar Certification Network and the label SOLERGY. Please hold the line and we will begin shortly. Welcome everybody, the webinar is about to start. Please hold the line and we will begin in a second. All right, everybody, I think we are good to go. Welcome from ISIS, the International Solar Energy Society. And today we are giving to you the IEA SHC Solar Academy webinar on Global Solar Certification Network, GSCN, and the label SOLERGY. This is a webinar of the Solar Academy. First off, I want to give you a quick introduction into ISIS and the work we do, as we have quite a few people joining us on the call today. So ISIS, who are we? We are a UN-accredited membership NGO founded in 1954 and accredited since 1992. And we represent a diverse membership of academics, researchers, energy practitioners, consultants, students, businesses, and advocates. We have members in countries from all around the world, and those are individual and both corporate members. Our vision is 100% renewable energy for all, used efficiently and wisely. To assume this mission, we have quite a range of key activities, such as our biannual congresses, the ISIS Solar World Congress, which I'm going to speak on later, as well as the Eurosun, and the next one is coming up in 2024. We have two key publications, the Solar Energy Journal, which has been around since the 50s, and I think many of you will know. And then just recently in 2021, we added the Solar Energy Advances Journal, and this is our first fully open access journal. So that's quite a new endeavor for us. Obviously, we do webinars such as the one today, and we do about one webinar per month. We have education initiatives, both online and offline, when we do our conferences. We have infographics, and we also are working on a solar energy museum because we want to compile all those 50, 60 plus years of solar research. Now, before we get into the webinar for today, just a quick word on our Q&A session. The Q&A session will take place at the end of the webinar, so after we have heard all presentations. But for you, you can type in your questions anytime throughout the webinar. So as you hear the presentation, type in your questions in your chat box. So you can start already by submitting questions throughout the webinar. The only ask we have is that you keep your questions short and precise and write who the question is for so that our moderator can then assign the questions accordingly. And with that, on the topic of moderator, I'm very pleased to introduce our moderator for today, Bärbel Epp. Bärbel is the founder and managing director of the German consultancy SOLRICO, and she's responsible for the international newsletter on solarthermalworld.org, where she reports exclusively about market and technology trends in the solar heating and cooling sector globally. And for many years, Bärbel has now been the chapter author for the annual REN 21 Global Status Reports. And Bärbel is our key moderator for all the IEA SHC webinars, and I'm very pleased to share the stage with her again today. So Bärbel, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Arabella, for the nice introduction. Welcome everybody to this first IEA Solar Heating and Cooling webinar that we have this year. I'm really looking forward to this collaboration this year because it's always very joyful to discuss the very many topics that the IEA Solar Heating and Cooling program offers us. So I will give you a short introduction into this program. It's an R&D program. It covers 19 member countries, the EC, the European Commission, and 8 international organizations. So on this map, all countries which are marked colored, you know, in orange, they are partner organizations. In red, they are direct members. from these countries, experts join together and they work on solar projects, solar research projects on a wide variety of topics. You list them here, like we have from neighborhood planning, solar process heat, solar cooling, solar energy buildings, compact thermal energy storages, solar district heating, solar hot water for 2030. Integrated lighting is a topic, and we have levelized LCA for solar heating and cooling technologies, which is the latest one that started. If you want to join one of these tasks, task is the word for the research platforms that we offer within the IEA Solar Heating and Cooling Program. You can check first on the website whether your country is member or part of a member organization, so that your researchers or you yourself can take part in one of these research platforms. If you go further to the website and check for a particular task, then you learn about who chairs this task, and you can contact the task manager and see whether your interest or your expertise is of interest for the task, and you can join, take part in the task meetings, you can present your research work, you can learn from the others and share ideas. The Solar Academy is sort of the platform from this IEA Solar Heating and Cooling Program to share our knowledge with as many people as possible. Because the task is not only scientifically active, but we obviously develop training materials. You find a lot of fact sheets, databases of projects, databases of technologies, and we also have developed in the past a lot of tools, and all this is available on the website. The main activity for outreach are these regular webinars with ISIS. We have them 4 times a year. The next one I can already announce for June, it's 20 and 22nd. It will cover the topic of the developments in solar heating and cooling markets and industry. And our webinars are always divided in 2, like you have the live session as we have today, and we have on Thursday one which is better placed for the Asian participants in terms of their time zone, and you have a rebroadcasted webinar with a live Q&A. We have a YouTube channel where you find videos with experts and from Solar Academy webinars. And what is very important, you can also ask for on-site trainings. This is possible in IEA SHC member countries. And the past trainings were, for example, organized in the Caribbean, in China, South Africa, and the UK. Where to find more information? Obviously, our website, which is mentioned here. Under publications, you find all the recent publications, but also earlier ones, and they are searchable, so you can type in keywords. You can follow us on social media, and you can also contact the Secretariat if you have any additional questions. The flagship publication of IEA SHC is the Solar Heat Worldwide report. It's an 80-page study which is published once a year around May, June, always covering the market data of the previous year. It's available free of charge with the key findings and some slides and charts on the website, and highly recommended if you want to get an overview on what's happening on solar heating and cooling markets. And besides that, there is a solar update published twice a year, which is on 12 to 13 pages, highlighting some current activities from the tasks. So this was it about the presentation. Our today's topic for the webinar is Global Solar Certification Network and SOLERGY. So I welcome all our speakers for today. And the first presentation will be on a tandem one. We will have Dr. Harald Trück, supported by Marisol Oropesa, to give us an idea about the latest developments related to the Global Solar Certification Network. We have Harald Trück is head of the Research and Test Center for Solar Systems and head of R&D at the Institute for Building Energetics, Thermal Technology and Energy Storage at the University in Stuttgart in Germany. He is also chairman of the Global Solar Certification Network and as such very qualified for the speech he's holding today. And he chaired also the SolarKEYMARK network for many years, so he also has background on this. Marisol is the chairman of the consultancy Matters, a German-Mexican consultancy. She is one of the founders of a Solar Heating Initiative, which created and promoted the SOLERGY label in 2016. So that qualifies her a lot to give us an update on that. She also participated in several projects internationally, like Solar Payback and Intersolar Mexico. So I'm looking forward to your update, and I think Carol will start.
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction, Bärbel, and hello to everybody on the globe. I'm very happy to talk about global solar certification. And as already mentioned, I will share my presentation with Marisol. I will start, then Marisol, who is our Global Solar Certification Network Communication Manager, will take over. And then I will close the presentation at the end. So the Global Solar Certification Network, what is it? It's a worldwide cooperation between solar thermal industry representatives, certification bodies, test labs, and inspection bodies or inspectors. That means all stakeholders that are involved in testing and certification of solar thermal products. And our aim is to facilitate worldwide cross-border trading of high quality solar thermal products. And one element to achieve this is to remove hurdles. That means to avoid retesting of products, to avoid re-inspection of production lines when manufacturers are entering new markets. For example, if you have a certification for Europe and you would like to go to another region of the globe, then a lot of testing and inspection is usually required. And this is time consuming, it's costly, and we try to remove these hurdles. So, and the reason why we aim for this is, on one hand, to increase the quality of the solar thermal products, and the other hand, to lower the costs, because manufacturers can save a lot of money for testing and certification. And finally, of course, there is a larger market, and larger markets leads to better business. So that's the idea behind. What is the method or the approach we are going to follow? It's that we use existing certification schemes. So that means we do not develop a new certification scheme. There are already a lot of well-established, well-recognized, well-accepted certification schemes available, like, for example, SolarKEYMARK in the European region, or SRCC in the US, or Golden Sun in China, or Watermark in Oceania. So that's not the way that we develop new certification schemes. We use the existing ones, but work on a way that they are mutually recognized between the different certification bodies. And the same we are doing with the test reports and inspection reports. So, and this is the concept of the Global Solar Certification Network. That means if the reports, and reports in this context means test reports and inspection reports, fulfill the requirements that are given by the GSCN working rules, and if they are issued by labs and inspectors that are recognized by the GSCN, then there is a basis for mutual acceptance. That means, for example, a test report from a European test lab is accepted by SRCC to issue SRCC certificates in the US. And we establish different corporations. We have a very good cooperation with SRCC. We also have other cooperations like with SHC or Watermark that are still under discussion, but the aim is, as I said, to harmonize these certification schemes, to harmonize the test and inspection report, to provide a basis for mutual acceptance. So what is the current status of the GSCN, how we call it, the Global Solar Certification Network? It's implemented as an independent autonomous network. So we do not belong to a manufacturer or to a test lab or to a certification body. We are completely independent. We have around 30 members. We also have some test labs and inspection bodies in the pipeline, because to become a member for industry, it's quite easy. You just have to end in the application and to pay the invoice. And the fees you can see below, they are very cheap. It's for industry around 250 euros per year. So it's more a symbolic fee. Yeah, but it's quite easy to become a member for industry. But as we are aiming on quality for test labs and certification bodies and inspection bodies, it's not that easy, because you have to fulfill a certain set of requirements, and these requirements are also checked by a quality assurance committee that is part of the network. And this is why there are also some applicants that are still in the pipeline before they become a real member. So the GSCN works, as I already mentioned, on the basis of mutual recognition of test and inspection reports. And this is what is called third-party certification schemes. It's based on initial type testing of the product and periodical surveillance testing. And a key element is also an inspection of the factory production, so an initial inspection at the beginning of the process, and then periodical surveillance inspections. And what is also necessary is that all bodies that are relevant for the operation of the GSCN, that means the test labs, the certifiers, and the inspectors, have an accreditation, because, as I said, we aim at high quality standards. And with regard to collector testing, the tests have to be based on the latest version of the international standard ISO 9806 for collectors. And talking about the history, and this is why we are also part of this IEA and IEA's webinar and ISO's solar webinar initiative. So originally, the first start of the Global Solar Certification Network was based on 2 IEA tasks led by Jan-Erik Nielsen, one of the fathers of the SolarKEYMARK. Then he turned to the Global Solar Certification and led these 2 tasks, task 43, task 57, already more than 10 years back. And the latest development is that we teamed up with the Solar Heating Initiative in 2021. And so we thought it's good to unite for solar heat, because we all have the same ambition, the same goal to make solar heat great again. And this is why the GSCN and the Solar Heating Initiative teamed up. And so we can also provide you now on a common basis the SOLERGY label. And we work very close together. We have joint marketing activities. We have joint communication activities, like, for example, this webinar today. And having said this, I would like to give the presentation to Marisol, who will talk about the Solar Heating Initiative and the SOLERGY label.
Thank you very much, Harald. I will share my screen. Thank you. Now, perfect. So I continue with the result from this alliance. So the Solar Heating Initiative created and launched the collector label SOLERGY in Germany in 2016. And as you have heard from Harald, the GSCN gathers the most relevant solar collector certification schemes worldwide. So we are working together in order to launch this label, or not to launch, to implement this label worldwide. What is this label? It's similar. Perhaps many of you have seen the EU efficiency label that we have here in all European countries since 2016, actually since the end of 2015. In many other countries, there are similar labels to show the efficiency of certain devices. In the case of the heating market, there are several technologies with such a label, such as like the heat pumps, for instance. However, there was and there is still no efficiency label officially from the EU. So we decided back then to do our own label and to use it in order to show how much clean heat solar collectors could supply. So it's a kind of a similar approach. It's actually complementary, since on the right-hand side where you see the efficiency label, it is about how less or how much primary energy is used by the devices. So energy sources coming from fossil fuels. And on the other side, the SOLERGY label is about how much clean heat is going to be generated by solar collectors. So this is a very rough presentation of the label. But in general terms, what we want to do is to show how much solar collectors can contribute to the CO2-free heat supply that we all need in this planet to reach our targets. And as we know, solar collectors are of very different types: flat plate, evacuated tube collectors, swimming pool collectors, concentrating solar technologies are also there, PVT collectors. So they all work well in different countries, in different regions, and at different temperature levels. So the good thing is that we can know how much they can produce in certain regions at certain temperature levels. This is what we want to show through the label. Also, with the SOLERGY label, we wanted to use the existing collector certification schemes as a base, and the Global Solar Certification Network has acknowledged already several of them. So we are taking them as basis in order to issue the collector label that manufacturers or suppliers of solar collectors can use in order to show how much solar heat is coming from the collectors. So you have here all different types of labels that we have. This is a regional approach. So we started in Europe. As you can see on the label, there is the map of Europe. Then we have the map of North America, because we have started already a collaboration with the SRCC to have the label also in that region. We will follow in Oceania and also in Asia. So we will be addressing this topic worldwide, and that's why we are collaborating with the GSCN. And the temperature levels, they also vary. Okay, so this is more or less a rough introduction of what we want to do globally, together with all the certification schemes acknowledged by the Global Solar Certification Network, so that we can visualize actually how much heat solar collectors can supply. So we have here different temperatures. For each region, there is a set of 6 labels. So you have different types of combinations for the collectors that you may want to show. And for instance, there is this opportunity for swimming pool collectors now, because we also have a label for low temperature, like for 25 degrees, which is basically the application for swimming pools. Then we also have a combined label where you can have 2 different types of temperatures, from 25 to 25 combined with 50, which is going more to the heat supply for hot water and heating in a building. And then you have more, much higher temperatures, which would be used, for instance, in the industry. So we have a label for different types of applications, not only in different types of regions, but also in different types of temperature ranges. And recently we launched also the label for PVT collectors, because as you may know, these type of collectors are gaining relevance, and it's important for us also to show what they can supply. So this is the label which is also considering the electrical output of our collectors. So we take the solar certification collector programs as basis, Then there is this registration done by the certification body, and in the end, manufacturers get their label. This is the most recent example of a company that applied for the collector label. This is a PVT collector. So you can have a look at that label on the internet at the website of Inserco. This is a European company. And currently you can, or manufacturers can apply for the label in Europe. In very few time, you can also have access to the label in North America and Central America, thanks to the cooperation with this SRCC. And in the near future, we will also do that in other regions. Manufacturers with their own brand can apply for the label, but also OEM manufacturers, and of course also OEM customers, so companies which are buying collectors from other manufacturers. Here are the requirements. They are pretty easy as long as they have already a collector certificate acknowledged by the GSCN, which is most of the most commonly known, such as the SolarKEYMARK in Europe, a test report, and a membership of the GSCN. So we hope that many more companies join this club. And if you want to know more about the collector label and all what we do, these are some addresses and some accounts that you may want to follow. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Marisol. This already leads us to the end of the presentation. So maybe you can give me back the screen so that I can show the last slide. Thank you very much. So, at the end, of course, we would like to motivate you to become a member of the GSCN. And why is it important and advantage for you to participate? If you represent industry, then of course, based on our global solar certification concept with this mutual acceptance of test reports and inspection reports, you can avoid a lot of retesting if you are selling your products in different regions of the globe. And furthermore, you can also save a lot of time and money if you would like to get the SOLERGY label. It's a very convenient way to go for both on one shot. So that's the reason why industry should become a member. Then with regard to certification bodies, it's also very good for them to become a member, because if they are a member of the Global Solar Certification Network, they can attract large international customers. So we have the biggest European collector manufacturer as a member. We have big Chinese collector manufacturers as member. So it's very advantageous for them to become a member. And also for test labs, there is the benefit that if they participate in the Global Solar Certification Network, then they have the chance to attract large international customers. And of course, as there are also a lot of international test labs involved, they can also benefit from this international experience exchange possibilities. And for inspectors or inspection bodies, it's in the same way that they also have access to international customers. So it's also beneficial for them to become a member of the GSCN. And usually we have 2 meetings a year, one via internet and the other one as a physical meeting. And our next meeting will take place on the 25th of October in Athens in Greece, a very nice place. And it will also be combined with other meetings like the SolarKEYMARK network meeting and standardization meetings. So I would like to encourage you to become a member. And then I hope to see you in Athens on the 25th of October. So thanks for listening, and Marisol, thanks for joining the presentation with me.
Perfect. A very good insight and update on what's happening on this important issue of global certification and global labeling. Thank you very much, Harald and Marisol. Yeah, we go straight to the next speaker. We have already a lot of questions in our chat, but we will for sure address them all at the end. Yeah, Stefan Fischer, he is a dedicated expert on collector testing as well. He's a direct colleague of Harald Schröck at the IGTE at the University of Stuttgart, and his main focus is solar thermal collector technology and advanced solar thermal heating systems, as I said, with a special focus on testing and certification. And he will inform us today about current collector tests and upcoming changes. Please, Stefan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just share my screen. So thank you very much, Bärbel, for the introduction, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my speech about standards for global solar collector certification, current tests and updates. This is what you can expect during the next 15 minutes. I will give a very short introduction to the Global Solar Certification Network, name the current certification schemes and standards that are used within the Global Solar Certification Network. Then I will present the collector tests, which are laid down in the ISO 9806, and I will inform you about upcoming changes and additions in the collector standard. And in the end, I will give you a very short summary. As I already told you, the aim of the global solar certification is to facilitate cross-border trading of solar thermal products by a minimum need of retesting and recertification in each new country where the products are to be sold. The concept of the global solar certification is being implemented for solar thermal collectors only up to now. We are planning to implement this scheme also for systems later, but right now it's only implemented for solar thermal collector, and it's based on the test procedures given in the ISO 9806 standard. And the Global Solar Certification Network is a cooperation between solar certification bodies around the world to ensure that when a product has been certified by one of the participating certification bodies, then they can obtain certification from the other participating certification schemes without retesting. Which are the recognized certification schemes? Right now, we have two that have signed the contract. One is the SolarKEYMARK, and the second is the Solar Rating and Certification Corporation, SRCC. The SolarKEYMARK was developed by the Solar Heat Europe and CEN, which is the European Committee for Standardization, and this was done in close cooperation with the leading European test labs and with the support of the European Commission. SolarKEYMARK is the main quality label for solar thermal products, and it's widely spread across the European market, but also beyond. The Solar Rating and Certification Corporation is a third-party certification body specializing in solar heating and cooling products, and the SRCC certifications, ratings, and listings are accepted throughout North America. So which standards are used for the global solar certification? For the SolarKEYMARK, being a European label, the SolarKEYMARK uses the EN 12975, the solar collector standards, defining the general requirements for solar collectors, and in addition, the international standard ISO 9806, solar energy, solar thermal collector test methods, which define the test methods the collector has to be tested against. SRCC is using a slightly different standard. It's called ICC 901 SRCC 100, but actually it's totally based upon the ISO 9806. So the tests I will explain you in the next slides are the same for SolarKEYMARK as well as for SRCC certification scheme. The collector tests according to ISO 806 subdivide in two categories of tests, tests related to the thermal performance of the collector and tests related to the durability, reliability, and safety of the collector. The first tests will give us the collector parameters to calculate the yearly energy yields. This is important so we can calculate the SOLERGY label afterwards. And the second tests ensure that the collector fulfills the minimum requirements on durability, reliability, and safety. For the thermal performance, we basically have four tests. It's a thermal performance test to determine the power curve. Then we have the incident angle modifier tests for the beam and diffuse irradiance. We have the thermal capacity and the time constant and the pressure drop. The tests in brackets or listed in brackets are optional tests and are not required for certification. The thermal performance test gives us the power curve as it is shown here in the graph, and it describes the peak performance of the collector and the performance loss when with rising temperature difference between the mean temperature of the collector and the ambient temperature. These tests can be performed indoors or outdoors. The incident angle modifier test for beam and diffuse irradiation describes the thermal performance dependency on the angle of incidence of the solar radiation. And as you can see in this picture, with a rising angle of incidence, the incident angle modifier will drop down and also the thermal performance of the collector will get less. This test can only be performed in outdoor testing. The thermal capacity test is another test, and this enables us to calculate the collector power under transient conditions, which is very important for dynamic system simulation. This test is either done by calculation, then the thermal capacity is calculated from material data, or it can be derived from measurement data. And the pressure drop describes the pressure drop of the collector in dependency of the volume flow. The higher the volume flow, of course, the higher the pressure drop across the collector will get. Coming back to the durability, reliability, and safety tests, here we have a couple of tests. It's an exposure test. It's a determination of the standard stagnation temperature, which is important for safety issues. We have the thermal shock test internally and externally. We have mechanical load tests, positive and negative testing. We have a rain penetration test. We have an internal pressure test, and we have an impact resistance test. For the exposure test and the determination of the standard stagnation temperature, the collectors are put outside into the sun for at least 30-day exposure without any cooling of the collector. And to finish the test, we need at least 30 days, but we also need 32 hours at a irradiance larger than 1000 watt per square meter, and also irradiation sum of more than 600 megajoule per square meter to pass this test. After the test, the collector will be examined if there was any damage visible on the collector. The thermal shock test is done internally and externally, as said before. Here the collector is also put out into the sun at a very high irradiance level, and then it's flushed with hot water. The hot collector is flushed with cold water and from the inside, and the external thermal shock is spraying the hot collector with cold water from the outside. Again, after the test, the collector is examined to see if there's any damage was done to the collector. The mechanical load test, positive and negative, here the pressure, positive or negative, is applied to the complete collector construction to check the resistance of the casing and the transparent cover to wind and snow loads. rain penetration test. During the rain penetration test, the collectors is sprayed from all sides for 4 hours to detect any water ingress to the collector. Internal pressure test. During the internal pressure test, there 1.5 times the maximum operation pressure is applied to the circuit of the collector to check the collector for leakage. And last but not least, we have the impact resistance test. This is done mainly to check the collector if it's resistant against hail. And this is done using a steel ball or an ice ball to determine the impact resistance of the transparent cover. So all those tests are laid down in the ISO 9806. And currently, the ISO 9806 is within revision. The draft of the revision is expected by the end of the year, and the publication of the new ISO 9806 is expected during next year. And I just made a list of the major topics we are looking into during the revision of the standard. The first thing is that we want to introduce the so-called gross solar yield, which is also important for the SOLERGY label. And this is the sum of the gross thermal yield and the gross electrical yield. As you all know, we see more and more PVT collectors on the market, and to pay more attention to them and also to reflect them within the labels, we need to implement also the gross electric yield in the standard. Another important topic is related to life cycle analysis, repairability, and material use. This is not defined up to now within the standard, and we want to include at least an informative chapter within the revision of the ISO 9806. During the last revision, we included a slightly different model, the fitting for the so-called WIST collectors. WIST collectors are wind and infrared sensitive collectors, and we included the model for the thermal performance was changed, and this has to be discussed again, and probably this will be taken back so that we come back to the version we had in 2013. Also, we would like to review some of the durability tests. Some incident angle modifier topics need to be clarified. There are different models to model the incident angle modifier are used, and it's not really clear what is the best, or if we should go back to one model. And also the dependency on the longitudinal and transversal plane have to be rethought. And we will also include some input from the SolarKEYMARK network working group on incident angle modifier. So there's some work to do there as well. Last issue we are working on is the implementing of a test procedure for air brine collectors. Air brine collectors are being basically heat exchangers to the ambient, which can use solar irradiation as well. And those collectors are used being a heat source for heat pumps. Here we are thinking about including nighttime tests and tests below ambient temperature.
Stefan, 2 minutes left.
Yeah, my last slide, Bärbel, thank you, is the summary. The Global Solar Certification Network is established and it's already working quite well. We have 2 certification schemes, the SolarKEYMARK and the Solar Rating and Certification Corporation, SRCC, which are recognized and which recognize the test reports from each other. The ISO 9806 standard is the basis for both certification schemes. and the ISO 9806 is currently under revision, and the publication is expected in 2024. And as soon as the publication is done, SolarKEYMARK scheme will take over the revised ISO 9806, but usually with a 1-year transition time. And the takeover of the ISO 9806 into the SRCC scheme usually takes a little bit longer, but I believe it will also be taken over by SRCC, but maybe Sean can tell us more about that issue later in his speech. Thank you very much.
Perfect, Stefan. Thank you very much. A great insight into a very complex topic. And you already handed over perfectly to Stefan Sean. So we have, oh, sorry, Martin Sean, no. Stefan, what is his name? Sean?
It's Sean
Sean
Martin.
is your first name.
Sean Martin. That's
Sorry,
okay.
with your 2 names which sound like first names. Sorry for that. Yeah, well, we go to the cross-Atlantic switch now about the United States, and it was already mentioned several times in our speeches today. The US-American rating system is called like Solar Rating and Certification Corporation, SRCC. This is a shortcut which was already used a lot. And Sean is the Vice President for Technical Services within SRCC. He's responsible for managing the SRCC product certification and listing programs for solar thermal and wind turbines. But today it will be only about solar thermal. So he will give us the insights from a certifier's experience with the Global Solar Certification Network. Thanks, Martin. I'm looking forward to your speech. Sean, sorry, you mix up your names. Sorry for that.
That is quite all right. Thank you so much for the introduction, and also thank you to Stefan for an excellent lead-in. You have made my my job quite a bit easier, so I thank you for this. I'm pleased to give the certifiers perspective on the Global Solar Certification Network. I will note that I'm going to move a little faster to provide time for questions. So if I've skipped over anything that anyone is interested in or feels is important, I'm happy to address them during questions, of course. So I'm going to provide you with an extremely brief introduction to SRCC, what we as a certifier believe the role of the GSCN is, the promises and challenges associated with global collaboration, and what's next. So I will not go into any great depth here. Stefan was kind enough to provide a bit of an introduction to us. We are a not-for-profit organization certifying solar thermal systems since the 1980s in North America. We are accredited to ISO 17065 as are most certification bodies and organizations involved with the Global Solar Certification Network. We certify solar thermal collectors, solar thermal water heating systems, solar pool heating systems under programs known as OG 100, OG 300, and now OG 400. Nothing new there. We do publish reference standards, and Stefan was kind enough to touch on that. There's a fair degree of similarity in the way that we handle reference standards as the EU does. So our standard 100 addresses solar thermal collectors and references ISO 9806. As he mentioned, we are looking forward to updating to the latest version. We operate under an ANSI consensus process to become an American national standard, so we have to go through an update process. We'll probably initiate that immediately after the latest version of the ISO 9806 standard is published, and get that going as quickly as we can. And we underwent a fairly extensive harmonization process in the last 2 cycles with SolarKEYMARK, so I think we can do that relatively quickly. And just a final note, our certifications are used for 2 things, both building codes showing safety and durability, and then also for rebate and incentive programs throughout North America. So with that, the The challenges. Well, the challenges faced within our industry, I think these are well known among most everyone. I could be wrong, but we obviously have differing requirements in different regions for both certification, testing, inspection, labeling. Some of them are redundant, that often causes a need for retesting and reevaluation, reinspection, anything that starts with the letters re. Inefficiencies result, cost, delays, and market confusion. This is what the GSCN is working against. What are the impacts? Well, these are probably, again, well known to many in the industry. It results in higher product prices. If manufacturers have to redo work that's already been done, they have to pass that along, and that makes it difficult for us to compete on a price basis with other technologies. Product availability, the cost may prevent them from introducing the product into certain markets or even introducing new product types. Project delays makes it difficult to innovate. In some cases, it limits interregional trade, certainly creates confusion in the marketplace, no doubt. If we're talking about the product in different ways in different parts of the world, it can cause confusion. And for those regions that are not implementing consistent and effective certification programs, we have seen problems with product quality. That was certainly the case in North America prior to 1980 when we implemented our program. Product quality was very mixed. So often this leads to a question, well, why, if we need certification, why not have a global certification? And there are a number of things that makes this tempting and appealing. If I can just certify and test once, why can't that be used everywhere? The problem with this is, and the challenge that we faced, is that variations in codes and regulations do occur throughout the world. It's a number of different things: the extent, the type, who's responsible. In some countries, it's one agency. In some countries, it's another. Sometimes it's at the federal level, sometimes at the local level. Enforcement is widely varying. Some countries will enforce rigorously, others almost not at all. The risk factors in any given location and tolerance for that risk can vary. Different accreditation requirements, different labeling mechanisms. We see some regional product preferences. Some parts of the world have an affinity for certain product types for various reasons, whether they be technical, cultural, or historical. Infrastructure can play a role. The type and quality of water that is available, the pressure, voltages, even materials. And of course, there's climatic differences, which could be addressed potentially, but do need to be acknowledged. Economics play a role, different economic structures, and different price points. And if we're to be honest, there is some protectionism that occurs in some regions where there is an effort to protect local manufacturers and limit trade. And of course, language is always a challenge. So what we have found is, at this point in time, maybe not forever, but at least for the foreseeable future, a global certification that addresses the entire world is not practical in my view. So what can we do? We know the challenges, we know our limitations. What can we do? And this is where I see the GSCN playing a role. First and foremost, I think we have a role in harmonizing the testing. Stefan did an excellent job describing the work that's going on, and we're certainly pleased to provide input to that. Hopefully we can also be a member at some point in the near future. But harmonizing testing of 9806 has been the cornerstone of everything that we've done. It has enabled us to do what we're doing right now. I think we have an opportunity for package systems next. We've done this for solar thermal collectors. Package systems is an area where we see a great need in the future. And then also addressing new technologies. And again, Stefan mentioned this very well in speaking about the use of solar thermal with heat pumps and PVTs as well. But again, quality assurance with between the labs is an option, and that's something that some of the members of the GSCN have raised, where perhaps we can compare results coming from different labs to ensure that there's consistency. I think the GSCN can promote effective regulations, gather information on regulations throughout the world. Oftentimes, we find that our knowledge of the regulations in different regions is poor. By working together, perhaps we can bring resources together better and encourage the use of harmonized standards. Inspections, I think, is an excellent area of collaboration that's been mentioned more than once. And I think we've talked about possibly developing consistent training, so we have high quality training available to build up a pool of very well qualified inspectors worldwide. And then lastly, advancing knowledge, and this is where Marisol's efforts have been very valuable in just advancing knowledge of solar thermal technologies and doing it in a way that's consistent, outreach and information that's consistent throughout the world. What's next? Well, we have a number of items that have been under discussion. We've talked about coordinating energy ratings for PVTs, and there's a work group looking at that right now. Obviously, there's the solar thermal promotion using the SOLERGY label. And I mentioned training and resources for global inspectors is an area that we've discussed, and there's a real need, and validation of test results between labs. For myself, I see opportunities in the future, again, looking at harmonization of testing and ratings for package systems, especially thermosiphons, real opportunity there to further reduce retesting. Compilation of global regulatory requirements, and among the most important is involving other regions that have not been represented. We would be very pleased to have representatives join us from a number of regions that have not, the UK, for example, South America, Asia, a number of regions within Asia. Again, there's a lot of promise, but we definitely have gaps in our involvement. And with this, I conclude. I think I'm at about the 10-minute mark. Here's my information, and of course, I'm very pleased to answer any questions.
Excellent, Sean. Good overview from the United States, complementing what was said in Europe. So we have now our last speaker, which is another Harald. It's Harald Porschenik. He has the industry background, and he comes from Green One Tech, which is the largest collector manufacturer in Europe, and he's responsible for research and development, for product management and quality management. So he will give us the experiences being a collector manufacturer and using the GSCN. Harald, the floor is yours.
So, thank you for the introduction. I have just to choose the right thing. Yes. So, yes, thank you for the nice introduction. And today I will give you a small overview. First of all, a couple of seconds about Green One Tech itself, and then how we are now actually participating in the GSCN and what are the really rough points which are interested for us. So Green One Tech, so it works. Green One Tech does its business in 3 business units. We are a collector manufacturer of standard solar thermal collectors from a size from 2 to 2.5 square meters, and there we are acting as an OEM collector manufacturer. And beside them, we are also have other products in our production systems, is like the thermosiphon systems, and also some other warm water supporting systems. And last but not least, also we are active in the project business, where we are where we're doing project business in district heating with special collectors with a large surface of 13 square meters. So our production volume actually is more than 500,000 square meters. This was 22, and what you see, we have a quite high export quote. Therefore, we need a lot of certifications for our collectors to sell over the Austrian border. We are selling today in more than 100 countries over the world, and doing this, of course, with fully automatic machines. As I've told you, therefore, to sell over the countries, we need a lot of certifications. Here's quite a rough overview. We have the SolarKEYMARK on our products, and also in France, the CSDP, the MCS certification in UK, SRCC for USA, DCL for Dubai, and also Global Mark for the Australian region. And all these different certification schemes cost quite a lot of money, and we have to do this to be a player in the market to sell our collectors. So up to now, we have more than 60 certificates active, where we always have to do some inspections, also physical inspections will be done in our production facilities. And I have now tried to give you a rough number, what time we have to spend for this. Just for one product or for one physical inspections, we have a preparation time before. This is about 2 days for one person, and roughly not quite a low salary behind. It's all over nearly 850 euros, and the inspection itself costs us about 2 days with 2 persons, and plus 10 hours of colleagues which are also involved in the inspection. We need the colleagues from the purchasing department, the complaint management, quality management, and also on. And this all for sure is a time-consuming phase, and this costs quite money. So the travel costs of the inspector is also part of it, and when you are speaking about the initial or repeat inspection, the initial inspection we have we have to spend about 10,000 euro for the performance and quality testing, which Stephen has told you about, which testing is required, plus the costs for the necessary production of these collectors. And on the next slide, I will give you then the summary of that. So if we are assuming that we have 6 different certificates and on one collector family, if we are multiplying this kind of things, you see that we have the production of the collectors. So for each of these certification, we have to produce a quite number of collectors which are then used for this necessary testing, and we have to transport to various testing labs. And we have also the travel costs of the inspection and of the collectors, and also the internal preparation. If we summarize this up, we have 6 different certificates. We spent quite a lot of money, nearly 80,000 euros. And now, if this would be possible to harmonize all these different certification schemes, and we are able to do only one initial test, maybe quite a little bit intensive and more widely based on other certification schemes, we could save quite a lot of money. And when you look at these possible savings, we have there an amount of nearly 60,000 euros, and especially this comes up by saving money from the initial testing. So this is quite for us the most important point to be here in the GSCN and to see that that is able to harmonize several standards to reduce the affordable testing. We can also have a look at these regulatory inspections we have, and if we go to these different numbers, there are also a possibility of saving money. And just I did this the last day. It's also possible to spend nearly 10,000 euros if we look at one collector family in 5 to 6 different certification schemes. What is my conclusion? So we have a preliminary theoretical saving potential of 10,000 euros per certification schemes. of each new collector type family. If we can manage that, one common initial test would be enough for several certification schemes. This is the goal from industry. There it would be possible to spend the most, to save the most money. In case of periodic inspection, there is also a possibility to save money. It's also nearly 2,000 euros per certification schemes. SRCC, I have to say, is the best example how it could work. The cooperation now, it works really well, and from the point of view of us, of manufacturers. So we need much more such cooperation like SRCC, and we have the best people on board to do this. And for my opinion, it takes really a lot of time to find the right contact person and the willingness of all involved parties to change the existing certification rules, because every party has to move a little bit to find a common solution, and I think this would be the most work for the next years. So our wish is for sure that one initial testing at the beginning would be really great, because it maybe it could like we do with the patents. So there's also the same. First we do a complete testing, and afterwards we can take the decision which certification schemes are needed, and this would be a really nice goal. Yes, and last but not least, the GSCN needs more industry partners. So all here in this webinar, all industry parties, feel free, and I would be very happy to welcome you next in one of our sessions. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Hello, everybody, to this morning or afternoon Q&A session, depends on where you are in the world. I would like to welcome you. Bärbel Epp is my name, Solrico. We have 4 of the speakers from the webinar that you just heard as recording with us. Unfortunately, the US American participant could not participate because of his time difference. We will wait a bit more to let participants join us, and I hope yet that you enjoyed the recording. Yeah, well, I think that you all had a great presentation, hopefully, and you enjoyed the 4 presentations. We have already a number of questions which I would like to refer to the speakers. For example, one of our participants wanted to know about certification in the Indian solar market. Is there any cooperation yet with the global certification network? Maybe Harald, you can say a word on this.
Yes, first of all, welcome to our Q&A session. And I think, yes, we already have corporations. As we are a global solar certification network, we have more or less contacts to various countries all over the globe. And yeah, among others, also in China. So there is already a certain relation established, but up to now, I think the approach of our global solar certification, which is based on the harmonization of existing certification schemes, inspection reports, and test reports, is not yet fully implemented.
Okay. There's another question referring to what is the difference between the test report and an inspection report?
I think there is a major difference with regard to the scope, because a test report is usually issued for a specific product, in our case, a solar thermal collector, and there all the tests that are required based on ISO 9806, so the international standard for collector testing, they are listed in the test report. The outcome of the test is listed in the test report. So the test report is specific for a certain product, and the inspection report is related to the inspection of a production line for solar collectors. and there it is checked if the production is organized in a way that a reproducible quality can be expected, so that it's really ensured that there is a continuous quality surveillance with reproducible quality. So I think this is a different test report for product, inspection report for production.
Okay. Yeah, we have a challenging statement here. It is possible for GSCN to replace SolarKEYMARK and SRCC in the future. A Chinese participant wants to know that. Maybe we ask Harald first, and then we ask Mr. Poschanek to Harald, the other Harald, what he thinks about that as a collector manufacturer being internationally involved in the market.
I think it's a really very good question. If GSCN is able to replace SolarKEYMARK, for example, I would say GSCN would be able, but it is not the aim of GSCN to replace SolarKEYMARK, because GSCN is not a new label or a new certification scheme. We are working on the harmonization of already existing certification schemes. So that means our aim is not to introduce a new certification scheme or to replace existing one. The aim is to harmonize existing ones, because we think that for specific regions, specific certification schemes are necessary and are relevant and are even more acknowledged. For example, in China, Golden Sun or something like this. And so we work on the harmonization, for example, between SolarKEYMARK and Golden Sun, but not on the replacement.
Okay, clear statement. The other Harald, what is your attitude about the meaning of local level, well, certificates and the global solar certification network?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Maybe as you have heard in the recording, for us as collector manufacturer, is very important to reduce costs. And so as my colleague Harald has said, when it's possible to harmonize special things so that the initial testing would be able to cover several certification schemes, it would be a really big advantage for us as collector manufacturers, but because there is the most huge money we have to spend to get in the market. And I don't believe that these different certification schemes will go away, because they are always linked to special subsidy schemes and so on. And therefore, I think in the future, it's also necessary to have these different certifications.
So I think we should make it clear again, because the same person just asked another question. Product standards vary from country to country. How to avoid repeated testing and inspection? And I think this is exactly what the global status, your global solar certification network wants to do. Harald, maybe you stress again this way of having your test certificates being accepted in another continent.
Yes, I think, yeah, it's a very good discussion, and I like it very much because it exactly addresses the challenges we face. And I think, as this person wrote, product standards vary from country to country. That's in principle right. And this is why we work on the harmonization of the standards. And I think for a lot of products, it is possible to have the same standards in many countries, and in some cases there might be country-specific additional tests or requirements necessary. But in principle, I think for all collectors on the globe, ISO 9806 can be a very good basis for testing. And yeah, depending on the specific locations, as I said, maybe some additional tests might be necessary, but there is really no reason why specific countries, like for example in South America or in China, still use their own collector testing standards and do not use ISO 9806, which is the international one. And this is what we are aiming at, a harmonization of the standard so that we have the same standard all over the globe.
Okay. Stefan, now we have a bit technical questions regarding certification. We have a participant who wants to know how about concentrating solar collectors. Are they covered already? Can they be certified?
Yes, of course, concentrating collector can be certified, but it might be tricky. It depends on the concentration factor. For instance, if you have evacuated tubular collectors with a CPC reflector, this is state of the art. This can be done by all the test labs, and certification bodies do the certification. When it comes to larger collectors, which are used for CSP, then it gets a little bit more tricky, but basically testing and certification of those products is also possible. The problem is basically the size of those collectors, having a gross area of maybe up to 100 square meter. It's not possible for usual test labs to test them on their test rigs. So we have to do the thermal performance test in situ in an installation. And also regarding the durability and reliability tests, some of the tests have to be adjusted. But whoever wants to certify his CSP product, just contact their test institute and certification body and discuss the issue. And then it will be possible.
Perfect. Another technical question regarding testing. We have a participant, he's interested in knowing whether solar thermal collectors can be tested according to different altitudes and different atmospheric pressures.
Usually this is not done, and it's not covered by the ISO 9806. And to our experience and knowledge, the difference in altitude or the change in the thermal performance depending on the altitude where the test was conducted is so small that we will not detect the dependency, because we have so many parameters like wind speed dependence, long wave radiation, temperature, irradiance, that we will not see the impact of the altitude.
Okay. Marisol, there's one participant, he wants to know about the exact costs if you become, obtain the SOLERGY label.
Hello, thank you for the question. You can, for the SOLERGY label, there is a registration price for the first year and then an annual fee. So this depends, of course, on the number of collector types that you want to have certified, and that are included in this case in the SolarKEYMARK for Europe. And you can have a look at the fees that INSERGO has, because it varies according to different aspects, so it's not that easy. However, let's say one example that I was given, it was just for 2 collector types, cost about less than 500 euros for the registration, and the annual fee is not much different than that. So it's actually a kind of small cost.
Okay. Another question regards whether there is already subsidy schemes in Europe that base their subsidy requirements on SOLERGY label.
No, on the SOLERGY label, not yet. Actually, the certification scheme for the collectors is the SolarKEYMARK, and that's the basis for the SOLERGY label. So as long as the SolarKEYMARK is a requirement for any subsidy, you don't need to have that requirement for SOLERGY, but the actual certification scheme is the SolarKEYMARK or the SRCC in the other regions.
Okay. I think we have 2 or 3 questions regarding PVT collectors. Maybe, Harald, we were questioned whether PVT collectors really have a dominance or relevance of the market already to have this role of being certified, or whether it's still a kind of in the development stage technology. Can you comment on that?
Yes, I can. And the typical answer that's used in many cases is it depends. And that means it depends on the country. For example, if we look at France, there are already 10,000 of square meters of PVT collectors sold every year. So there it's really a very important collector technology. In other countries, it might be still a niche market, but what is clear is that there is a big future for PVT collectors because they simultaneously produce heat and power, and that is what is needed for many applications. For example, for typical homes, you need hot water for the shower, you need electricity to operate your household appliances, and this is why PVT collectors for sure will gain more and more relevance. And yeah, with regard to the question if they are still under development, of course they are, but we also have cars. We have them for 150 years, and they are also still under development. But anyway, it's a mature, reliable technology. And the same is with PVT collectors. There are new products on the market. There are products in the development pipeline, and there are already products on the market that are sold in the same configurations for several years. And from them, we know that they are reliable and have also a long lifetime.
Okay, thank you. Stefan, what is the tricky thing about testing these kind of PVT collectors? Because they have an electric side and they have a solar thermal side. Can you give us some insights on that?
Yes. First of all, the PV model used in the PVT collector has to be certified according to the IEC standards. And then within the SolarKEYMARK testing, we will test the thermal performance and the thermal part, as I described in my presentation about the ISO 9806. But in addition, since usually there is a contact between the PV model and the thermal part, some of the PV tests have to be redone on the modified PV model. And this is the trickiest thing because this is quite costly. And most of the test labs providing the testing for ISO 9806 are not able to do those testing. So it's an additional costs and an additional effort.
Okay. Interesting. Marisol, how about PVT being covered in your SOLERGY label? Is this already fairly advanced?
Yeah. Actually, there is this company already with one company with the PVT, with the SOLERGY label for their PVT collector. So we have it, and if the collectors are SolarKEYMARK certified, then for sure they can apply for the SOLERGY label.
Okay. Can you maybe tell us how your activities in the Ocean, like Australia and China and Asian countries develop? Because this is the audience we want to address with this early hour webinar today.
Harald, do you want to say something, or shall I say something?
I prefer if you answer the question. Maybe I will answer.
Okay. Yeah, well, for the SOLERGY label, of course, we have the scheme in place. So we have the guidelines to implement the label. And what we would like to have is a cooperation with the certification body and with the certification scheme so that we can issue the label for that region. But it's already there, let's say, the technical part, and also, well, how it should look like. So in case there are certification bodies willing to be part of it, they can reach out.
Ah, okay. So you need to implement the SOLERGY label, let's say in a country like Australia or China, you need, like you do with Dincertco, a corporation in the country that hands over or issues the certificate or the labels.
Exactly, preferably, of course, preferably, okay. Because it's always based on a certification scheme, which is acknowledged by the GSCN in cooperation with a certification body, because the GSCN itself is not certifying anything. So everything is done by a certification body who is member of the GSCN. So at this moment, we have the collaboration with Dincertco for the label in Europe and the SRCC for the label in North America. So ideally, we could have that constellation also for Australia or for Asia. We have for both regions the goal and the aim to also have the label there. Otherwise, you can always just reach out and talk to us, and we can find a way to do it also together with INSERCO, with SRCC, but preferably we will have to have like the regional approach, right?
So Harald, how are your negotiations going? It seems that's more GSCN negotiation level that is required as well to implement the SOLERGY label in these regions.
Yeah, actually, what is required is both. First, of course, we have the challenge to find a certification body in this region that accepts these harmonized test reports, or also to agree on the harmonization of the test reports, because they also use sometimes different standards. They have their typical or specific Oceanian standards that makes it not that easy. First, they have to implement ISO 9806 as a basis for collector testing in this region. But we have been in contact, and there was a close cooperation, but now it's, I would say, a bit dormant. There is not that much going on in the moment. But if somebody is attending from the region who could help us to intensify our efforts to wake up this cooperation again, we would be happy.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. A very interesting discussion. I don't see any new questions, or there's one again. How to test and evaluate PVT collectors for us as a condenser of heat pumps. To use as a condenser of heat pumps. Like, I think it's talking about, like a combined system with a heat pump. This was just coming in. Stefan, can you say something about that?
Yes, I can try. Is it really a condenser at the heat pipe or evaporator? Because the evaporator,
it's probably the evaporator, yeah.
That can be tested as a solar collector without any problems, because it's basically an uncovered collector, and this has been done already quite often.
Quite often. Okay. Yeah, so no more new questions. I thank the speakers for the engaged discussion, and I will hand over to Arabella for the last final words. Thank you, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much, Bärbel, and thank you very much to the speakers for joining us. Thank you to the audience for submitting your questions. Before we close the webinar for today, there are two final announcements I'd like to make from ISO's side. The first is we will have a webinar recording, and we will also have the presentations available to you. So we will have a combined recording of the presentations you saw earlier, as well as the Q&A session we are having right now. And both the presentation and the recording, they will be up on the IEA SHC Solar Academy homepage, as well as the ISO's homepage in a few days. And for any ISO's members joining us on this call, you will be able to access everything through your ISO's webinar archive. This is the place you already have unlimited access to all of the past webinars we did as well. So just go through the members area, and that's where you will find all the relevant information. And then for my final announcement before we close, ISO's is doing the Solar World Congress again this year. It's going to be our first in-person Solar World Congress since 2019, so since quite a while. And we are going to India, actually. We're going there from the 30th of October to the 4th of November. We're going to New Delhi. And we have just launched the call for participation yesterday. So we are now accepting abstracts to submit. You can present your work as either an oral or a poster presentation. And we are also looking for side event applications. So if you're working with an organization that's interested in hosting a side event during that Congress, there's also a way for you to submit an application. So I encourage you to check out our homepage. It's swc2023.org. That's where you will find all the relevant information. And with that, I'm happy for all of you to have joined us this morning. Thank you again to all of the speakers. And we are closing the webinar now. Goodbye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good time.